Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Hello. Good evening. I'm Gwen Robinson, President of the Foreign Correspondents Club of Thailand, and I'd like to welcome you all tonight and a very distinguished panel here to talk about the future of Thailand's tourism industry. And I think without further ado, I will hand over to Imtiaz Mukbil, Travel News, and who is going to be our moderator for the evening, and he can introduce. And just to remind, this event is being live streamed on Facebook, and you can ask questions over Facebook. Hopefully we can pick them up this end, and in the audience you are very welcome to ask questions afterwards. I think, Imtiaz, you can fill people in on the timing for the panellists and things. So can I invite the panel, please, to come to the stage, and we'll start discussing a very critical question for Thailand. Over there, thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Imtiaz Mukbil. I'm the Executive Editor of Travel Impact Newswire. I'm a life member of the club. I'd like to thank all the panelists for being with us tonight. The travel and tourism industry now is at a very critical juncture in its history, in view of the collapse over the last year because of COVID, but also because of the importance in the economic, social, culture of this country. There are a lot of panels that are taking place on travel, but I think one of the things that we have tried to do in this panel at the FCC is the words looking back and looking ahead. One of the things that is not being done, and that is the gap that we are trying to fill today, is that the travel and tourism industry in planning its future also needs to be finding ways to learn from the lessons of history and to take a look back before it looks ahead. So that's the niche that we have tried to fill, and we are hoping that some of the discussion that we'll be seeing today will allow that a new line of thinking that might emerge as we look forward to rebuilding the industry over the next year or so. I'm really honored. We have with us this evening, we have Kun Surapon, the ex-governor of the Tourism Authority of Thailand. We have Kun Sumet from the president of the Thai Incentive and Convention Association. Kun Virot, who is the president of the Professional Guides Association. Kun Nichapa from the Thailand Convention and Exhibition Bureau. And last but not least, Kun Montira from UNESCO. And you will find out later on what UNESCO is doing on the panel. I did get asked that question earlier on, but I think we have kept pretty much some of the more interesting and forward-looking back issues for the last. I'm going to begin with asking Kun Surapon to start to be the first speaker. Kun Surapon has to leave for another engagement in a few minutes, so he will say a few words, and then he's also agreed to take one or two questions before he leaves. So, Tanpuakap, I think one of the, we have the slides, can we get the slides up? Okay, it's on now. Tanpuakap, you took over the Tourism Authority of Thailand as governor in 2010. That year was the 50th anniversary of the Tourism Authority of Thailand. And let me just remind you of a word that you yourself spoke on the 12th of March 2010. 12th of March 2010. And I noted that because I was there at the time at the ITB in Berlin. And this was just 3 months after you had taken over. And I'm going to quote you exactly. If the first 50 years of tourism development were focused largely on maintaining the economic impact of tourism, the next 50 years will require an equivalent focus on minimizing the ecological impact. Very, very futuristic, visionary words, which you spoke in the first year of the governorship, in the year that marked the 50th anniversary of the Tourism Authority of Thailand. So looking back, Thanpuak, has those words been realized? Has the industry grown maybe a little bit too fast for its own good? Was it able to manage the balance between the economic and ecological impact of the industry?
Okay. Okay, good evening, Gwen and Kun Imtiaz, the panelists, and ladies and gentlemen. Can you hear me? Okay. Before going to your questions, I would like to take you back to memory lane of the tourism industry of Thailand. Looking back is a kind of topic that I think I know a little bit about, but in the future, it is very hard nowadays to really tell you exactly what's going to happen. But anyhow, if you see the graph, we will see the growth of the tourism industry in Thailand. We cropped the timeline of 1970 to 2020. So you can see that in 1970, we welcome about 600,000 tourists, international inbound, 600,000. To be exact, 628,000 in 70. And if we go back a little bit further, Tourism Authority of Thailand was established in 1960. And in that year, we only have visitors from overseas, 84,000. So that's the number that we begin with. And then right after that, you can see a gradual growth, 73, 24, 25, 76. During that time, you have to bear in mind that in those days, the main tourist visitors from overseas, they are from long-haul markets, Americans, Europeans, and our first tourist office overseas that we established in 1965, you guess where? It's the office in New York, the longest haul, to Thailand. But why New York? And then after 2 years, we established another tourism office in Los Angeles. Because in those days, we can remember that Americans are very lucrative travelers. And Pan American is one of the most, with the highest network going into the Far East. So that's why we heard about one of the biggest tour operator then, the World Travel Service, run by Kun Kusak. And their main account was American tourists. And also bigger tour operators like Travex, like Ditham, they also catering for Europeans. We have not a big number, but we would say that longer stay, quality tourists as such. Because in those days, the big markets like China, Russia, or India, still not very active. Or virtually, they will not exist as the source market then. I have one remarkable year was 1973, when Thailand received 1 million tourists for the first time. 1973, 1 million, and we got so excited. We celebrate 1 million visitors from overseas into the country. And then right after that, it's ever increasing. Just only 1 year in 1976, that's a slight drop. And that's because of the internal political unrest. I don't want to mention that, but it caused a slight drop. And other than that, it's just going up and up until 77, 78. We made a comeback, partly due to we host the big game, the Asian Games, which is happening in the end of the year, at the end of the year. So we have quite a high number of visitors and also athletes from 25 countries visiting us. So the number has increased during that year. And then come the first very important event, probably the first, we claim it's the first in the world, the Visit Thailand year, 1980.
87.
No,
Sorry,
1980 is the first one.
78, I beg your pardon.
No, 1980 is the first Visit Thailand year. And the second one is 1987. We have it 2 times. Yes. But that make a big difference. We have a surge of number of visitors, 17%, and then it got a momentum to the 81, 83, and then come 87, when we have the Visit Thailand years for the second time. And that one is the big success. An increase of 2 digits for the 4 consecutive years followed. So that is the turning point of the tourists visiting Thailand in terms of inbound, that 1987. And if you can remember, the Visit Thailand year has been not copied, but it's followed by many tourist destinations as well. And then in 2001, 2012, 2001, we hit 10 million visitors. And 12 years after that, it's 20 million visitors. 2016, it's 30 million. 2019, it's just 84,000 short of 40 million. So to your question, we are growing very rapidly. But as you can see, it is a matter of fact that the bigger markets emerge, like China, like Russia, like India. So the numbers of inbound has tremendously increased right after that. I can never think of having visitors from overseas exceeding 20 million. It's just like something that we never anticipate. But right nowadays we are looking for 40 million. That we're talking about numbers, and as a matter of fact, it worries a lot of people, including the Tourism Authority of Thailand. Before 2006, the Tourism Authority of Thailand, we are just the one unit dealing with tourism. So we're dealing with development, with planning, with marketing. So more or less, we have the overall picture in one unit. We know the marketplace, we know our resources, we know our limitation, we know our carrying capacity, we know the word balance and sustainability. But anyhow, it's been looked at a way of bringing in foreign currency, which Thailand much needed anyway. And it is the industry that provides lots of jobs, to every level. And also it can distribute the income into, remote areas, not just only into big cities. That's why the government has to really step up with the promotion of the tourism industry. When we hit the 40 million, we can see, but I'm not going to answer whether we're going too fast or not, but we are looking at few factors when you're reaching that point. Okay, while we have like 40 million visitors from overseas, the Thai people, about 140 man trips, also going around and travel within the countries. So there are lots of heavy traffic going to places. But if you really think about it, Kun Imtiaz, since the year of 1970s, it's always been Chiang Mai, Phuket, Kanchanaburi, Pattaya. And when in the 90s and past 90s, we still talk about Chiang Mai, Phuket, Pattaya, Samui. So the concentration of the tourist traffic is, somehow put a lot of weight on those areas. If you're talking about the areas stay the same. It's just only the number of rooms that increase. You can have more rooms, but you can have no more beaches. You cannot. Just simply you cannot have more beaches. You cannot have more islands. So that's how we deal with that balance, sustainability that I mentioned. We not just cannot go for a number, but we are talking about the quality against quantity. It's been talking for many years, but to really materialize that, to realize that it's not that easy. We have to ask ourselves that when we reach that point, what happened to our social impact? What exactly happened to our environmental impact? What's the economic impact? Put them together. Overall, are they negative or positive? Can we do something about it? Or it just, we still can wait? I have, we among ourselves who are concerned about the sustainability and the long term of doing tourism, we have the very simple health checklist for tourism destination. We have one: is Thailand still convenient to come? Is it the accessibility and all that? No congestion. Second, the cleanliness. It's clean enough. We ask about the safety. Is it safe for tourists to come? And how about the hospitality? Are they professional enough? Do we have enough skilled labor to give good services to the tourists? And we ask about our genuinity and authenticity. Do we still keep our uniqueness as Thainess still intact? And lastly, can we still keep the environmental protection in the adequate way? So that are the questions that we have to ask ourselves. It's not, I'm not excusing TAT, but it's not just only TAT who can do that. It needs a lot of concerted effort from everybody concerned to really look into this. And if you want to go as the quality destination, and if you want to really be able to achieve the goal of quality against quantity, we have to really have the good product. So that's very important. We have to look at our cultural content, our historical content, our natural content, whether it's been developed or whether it's been deteriorated. So that's the question that everybody in the tourism industry have to bear in mind, not just only numbers and the revenues.
So, now that the industry slogan is to build back better in the new normal, And given the fact that there is now a chance to start from a clean slate because of the impact of COVID, what do you think needs to be done in order to bring the industry together, not just to focus on the numbers, but to look at the quality and put that balance into the redevelopment program?
It's just like now we stop the engine and we are going to restart again. It happened not by our choice, but it happened because of COVID. I don't know where they're from. Up until now, I don't know where COVID's from. But every fortnight, they will bring more families. They will spread, they go everywhere, and it doesn't seem that they are going to go away. But okay, we learned that lesson. We have to stop the engine. This is the best time now to really, start what we would like to do for a long time. That is to look after the environment. After the few months or half a year, we see that there's lots of changes in our natural resources, in our tourism assets. We see that now Patong, or even Pattaya, I just went a few weeks ago. The beaches, very nice, very clean. We have read the record from the forestry department about rare species reappearing. And these are the things that can happen if we really stop and think and do something about it to protect. And this very valuable thing will return. So I think first thing, we can see that the renewal of these valuable resources can happen. So let it happen and keep it that way. That's one thing. For Thailand, because we are trying to sell the beauty of the natural beauty, the historical, the cultural, it's all about conservation. So this is the thing. But if we say that we stop the engine and we are not doing anything, you're not going to live anyway. You're going to die. So from the demand side, the domestic travel is very important. Now I'm going back to marketing. We see that the domestic tourism is now playing a very important role. And in many places, they have to adjust themselves to cater for the domestic travelers. But in this sense, I mean that we have to do something to really make domestic travel more important. Make people travel more and reach more to the new places. And these new places will be prepared. When the time comes that the inbound tourists are coming in, they can go to someplace else, not Phuket, Pattaya, Chiang Mai, Samui, something like that. So I think that is what we can do. And another thing that is the business as usual. That is, you have to really step up all the digital things, the IT infrastructure and all that. Make travel convenient, safe, healthy, hospitable, and environmentally healthy. I think that's probably the way to go.
Thank you.
After
Thank you. That was an excellent trip down memory lane, Kaptan Puakap. I think one of the advantages of being the former governor is that you can speak your mind very frankly, as you have done. So that was a wonderful trip down memory lane. You will be leaving in a few minutes, right, Kaptan Puakap? Would you take a few?
Unfortunately.
Will you take a few questions, please? He's agreed to take a few questions. Richard, so please. Okay, we've got 2 questions already. Ambassador, you wanted to ask one question as well, so perhaps, yeah.
Hello, my name is Richard Barrow. I just have a question about the statistics that you were talking about earlier. You said last year there was nearly 40 million, which is quite a large number. I just want to know, how is the numbers calculated? So as an expat, am I calculated every time I come into Thailand? Am I counted as a tourist? Like the businessmen who go in and out every single week, are they counted every time as another tourist? And what about the migrant workers from Cambodia and Burma? Are they also counted as tourists?
We use the WTO definition. Those who come as a tourist is the one who stay not longer than 30 days. And they're not coming to seek jobs. Okay, that's the general definition. But every time tourists come, probably one tourist might come to visit Thailand twice a year. We count them as two, of course. It's just like you count the customer going to the department store. You don't count Mr. Imtiaz just once, but if Mr. Imtiaz visit 3 times, it's 3 customers. So it's that way. And we work, we have the methodology working with the Bank of Thailand and also the main what do you call the main the immigration is the one who to keep the record. And we have the cleansing process too, that if you are the expat, it might be delete out. And if it's those who come for the business purpose, will be delete out. So that's how we calculate, and it is done, I think, universally.
Sir.
Peter Traynor, I'm a club member. I first came here as a tourist in 1980, and I remember the place being a lot different. There was a lot more Thainess evident. Stated succumbed in me lasting memories, the pollution in the air from the traffic, a lot of canals operating, and a lot more traditional shops and outlets, no Siam Paragon or Emporium or anything. But my concern about the numbers and the impact on the environment and on Thailand's economy is, does the tourism authority or any government authority, any organization, have the ability to be able to restrict the numbers if you wanted to? Prior to COVID, there was no intention of anyone reducing the number from 40 million down. There was no intention to restrict tourists. The objective seemed to get more and increase the income from tourism. So even if there is a policy to improve sustainability, to provide specific types of tourism, like the medical tourism or sustainable tourism, even if any government branch wants to do that, do they have the authority to stop individuals or companies from developing their own projects? So if a developer wants to promote his condominiums or...
Sorry, and the question is?
Well, can you control private individuals from promoting their own business to increase their tourism, increase their tourism numbers? Is there any way that it can be restricted as part of a national policy?
Is it possible to keep the numbers under control, Captain Pua? Was it possible in the past? Will it be possible in future?
And is there a will to do it?
That's a very difficult question. As a free market economy. But there are ways of probably the restriction in some particular area, like the national parks or some particular tourist destination, that we can restrict the number of visitors, or what we call in the old days the carrying capacity. That can be done, but by some authorities that we have to really sit and talk with many concerns. In that way, you can protect many of the tourist fragile resources. But to really stop people from coming in, I think it's rather difficult being, the hub of the aviation and being a destination that people like to visit. There will be impact on airlines and many things. But I think about of the carrying capacity, or now they call the tourist sentiment. You're not counting by physical, but you look at the feeling of the tourists, that they feel that this place is too crowded. It's not necessarily the carrying capacity as such, but it's just they feel that it is too cramped. They don't want to come. That is more relevant when you are going to do the business. It's a sentiment, not a carrying capacity that measured by the number of people, the waste they throw and all that, very physical. But somehow it might be half the capacity, but the tourists think that it's saturated already. Then that will be something to control indirectly.
How much time do we have? How much can you take? One more question, perhaps? One more question? Yeah. Okay. Ambassador, would you like to just one more question there?
Thank you so much. Thank you for this very interesting expose. My name is John. I'm representing a country, Sweden, which is, I think, we account for millions of those visitors over the years. Swedes have a profound love for this country. But allow me to be a little bit provocative. And I would like to describe mass tourism as something that is going through profound changes globally. And this is something that needs to be taken into account, of course, when you plan. And I have to say that I sense a lack of crisis awareness because I would be very surprised personally if we will have ever again 40 million visitors. But at the same time, this of course offers an opportunity for Thailand and other tourist destinations to actually do some very critical changes. Because if I have just one piece of advice, it would be sustainability, sustainability, sustainability. It's happening now. And it's fast. Already before COVID, we could see a sharp decrease in Swedes coming here. We used to have 400,000 a year. We were down to 280 before COVID, and it's going down. And that is because, climate awareness is one thing, of course. And I think that the tourism industry here would need to adapt. It can be offering packages including climate compensation, other things like that. So this is very critical, I think, and I lack a little bit of crisis awareness. And I really
is there a question there,
yeah,
Ambassador?
Sorry,
or would you
it's more of a remark.
Like him to comment?
No, I don't see the plans. I don't see a program for a new kind of tourism.
Okay, Build Back Better. Same related to your earlier answer about the carrying capacity and the sustainability.
Yes, I think the idea are related as the first question. The law is going to be difficult, but we can set another barriers like carbon offset and all that thing, or even incentives, so that we can have a controllable number of people. But if we are going to pass the laws, if you read, I'm not a lawyer, you are not too, but if you really look into what law we have to protect the environment in Thailand, probably Kun Chantira can have a better answer. There are so many written about what you can do, what you can't do, what are the places that is protected, and all that. it's all there, but very difficult to exercise. So I rather think of another measure that is more, what do you call it? It can be enforced easier than the law itself, but it's like the carbon footprint or any other kind of incentive, that really can make people get awareness, or they will get reward if they are doing something right. I think probably that's the way to go in the future, rather than making more and more laws and then you cannot enforce them.
I'm sure this issue is going to be coming up very avidly in Kun Montiral's presentation as well. So, if you're staying with us, please, you're more than welcome. Entirely your call. Can I move on now to the next speaker, Kun Nichapan from TSEB? Would you like to elaborate on how the hundreds and thousands of square meters of convention space are going to be filled going forward, Kap?
ขอบคุณค่ะ Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for having me. It is always great to be among all the gurus and on the panel and gurus on the floor. Especially when we talk about tourism, basically business events are the customers to the tourism industry, and I am expecting new initiatives or maybe new laws on tourism so that business people or business events people can really comply to. However, I don't know whether you know about TSEP, so allow me. Yes? No? Okay. No feedback. So I would just go with 30 seconds on the brief introduction of who TSEP is. We are the government agency. We report ourselves directly to the Prime Minister's office. And it is our task to bring in positive economic impact into the country using business events as a tool. So TSEP is here to make sure that we first respond to the policy from the government, especially when they launch Thailand 4.0, whatever industries that they are focusing on. We are going out there in the world and hunt for new events and bring all the whole events coming to Thailand and using Thailand as a destination to organize such events. COVID had great impact to business events industry. Basically, we lost 70% of our business events to COVID-19. And thanks to our past experience, you're the man of history, you always ask whether we have learned from the past mistakes or experience. We learned a lot from SARS, MERS, and also some certain political challenges that we had in the past. So TSEP detected the risk from COVID since February, and since then we came up with what we call 3R strategies. First, the response plan. The plan that we launch is, of course, we have to make sure that we have one streamlined communication to talk to the stakeholders, not only international customers, but also domestic stakeholders. So we set up My COVID Info Center. The primary role is to make sure that we collect all information, and then we sort of change the info into intel to the stakeholders on what would be the impact, what would be the next step, and how would stakeholders can sort of really prepare themselves on worst case scenario. That's one thing. The other thing is we immediately relax our support campaign. The role of TSEP, basically we support organizers. We provide subvention program, we provide non-financial subsidy or support program. We also the facilitator, the enabler, and hopefully we are the partner to the stakeholders in bringing in the events and make sure that the whole journey of their bringing in the events into Thailand would be comfortable and also sustainable. So we relax our support campaign so that organizers can have a better access to funds. We also come up with a series of domestic MICE support funds. For example, for any corporates registered in Thailand, if they want to have their corporate meetings, if they want to go up country, then we have certain funds, the support funds for them to facilitate their, arrangement. So we have this series of domestic funds to promote domestic MICE. We also provide certain funds to venues so that they can, make sure that the hygienic practice in their venue is up to the standard. And we collaborate with our partner, especially the associations. TICA here is one of the best partners that TCEP ever has. We came up with what we call MICE hygiene practice. Basically, is the sort of practice in running hygienic events, sustainable events, using technology as a tool. And we also use this new MICE hygiene practice as the negotiation point to the government so that they can reopen business events in June. Luckily, we have that consent, and from then on, up until now, we have more than 100 business events running in Thailand that TCEP supported, and that is the good news. We also detect that, everybody, technology will be here to stay. So we have been working with National Innovation Agency, bringing in all the selected startups and ask them to come up with the applications that is applicable to MICE industry. And then we use that as a platform for the organizers to go and shop around the service that all these startups have. We've come up with what we call virtual meeting space. Basically, is the online platform for organizers and stakeholders to use as hybrid event or virtual events, or using as a webinar or anything. And that is, the service from TCEP to the industry. We also use that, the work from home period, as the opportunity to engage with more customers internationally, basically, because our main role is to bring in international customers. So one part is to promote domestic MICE, the other keep our customers' mind share to the maximum as much as possible. That is our response plan. We are now in the phase of recovery plan, and the recovery plan come up with new norm subvention program, which includes technology voucher that we provide on a complimentary basis to any business events that they would like to have their events running from here on until the end of next year. The new norm subvention program is super generous. We have a nickname to this the subvention program. We call it COVID package. So basically, by the name, it means that we collapse all the basic requirement or criteria in terms of number of participating international attendees or number of size of the event. As long as they have the events on, then they are entitled to the support program, whether it is fully virtual, it's hybrid, or it's in-person or physical. That's a recovery plan. We also collaborate. We think that this is a time that we have to collaborate more, and partnership is key, because in the past many organizers may like to invest in all the certain technology or whatever services that they would like to provide to the customers, but right now they don't have that much of the cash flow or the assets that they can do so by themselves. So partnership would be the key, and we are working together on both sides, the supplier side and also customer side, to bridge them to the new requirement. I believe that the key to success to business events would be how soon and how agile that we can be in order to embrace to the new requirements from our customers. Then the next R would be restoration. Basically, the restoration, we are working in two parts. The restoration would be on the government side. We are working on the taxation regime. We are also working on visa facilitation so that we can facilitate, incoming international business travelers. The latest initiatives that we have been working with the Ministry of Health and also Ministry of Foreign Affairs is on the special arrangement. We have special tourist visa. Right now, the new initiative that they are now launching and they plan to launch soon is to have, they have right now the state quarantine, alternative state quarantine. They are now launching golf quarantine. They are now also launching wellness quarantine. So there are a series of areas that the government trying to tell business people that, okay, we hear you, we need to have business going so that we can keep, money or income coming into the country. However, right now is a special time, so we have to get consent from the Ministry of Public Health, who are now have been working very closely with TCEP and also with the association. Now, under special arrangement, that is the travel protocol, the latest travel protocols that we have, the special arrangement would require a mobile quarantine for short stay business people, and this group would have to be tagged along with what they call the medical control team.
Observational team for the disease prevention.
Right. And the team, right now, we are working with the Ministry of Public Health and also TICA to have the DMC and PCO certified as the, medical control team. And then they would be the one who sort of doing all the logistics, also monitoring the disease, and also doing all the experience throughout the whole journey. Yeah, I think more to that, Khun Sumet can help elaborate. Now, we are now depending on the vaccine, and the news on the vaccine keeps fluctuating on a daily basis, but that's life. We are keep monitoring. The latest news that we have is that vaccine would be ready and the sky would be reopened fully by the end of June or starting second half of the year. And if that is the case, then I believe that we are good to go, because right now TCEP has compiled and consolidated with the international organizers, and right now we have more than 54 exhibitions, international exhibitions would be organized in Thailand next year. We also have more than 100 leads in terms of incentive groups from based mostly from Asian countries and some from European countries coming into Thailand. But again, these are the speculation. They say that once the sky is open, they would come. So all the hopes is now pinning upon the vaccine. Now, looking forward, based from your, the theme of today, looking forward, I think that the new norm business events would be the area that we have to focus on, and we have already been focusing on in terms of how we can pave the way and build new ecosystem for new norm business events. I believe that collaboration would be key. Partnership is essential. Technology is here to stay. There would be new requirement of new skills, especially in terms of new technology-based skill. And we are talking with all the associations, and we come up with a series of new initiatives. However, I think the key 3 areas that we have to go forward is that we have to think big, because we can go as high as we can think. So if we think to a certain level, that is the top that we can go. We have to think big. However, we have to stay agile so that we can be more risk averse. It is now the time for scenario management, and each scenario would impact the investment, the cost, and also business model. And that's where agility comes into play. We have to sort of understand, and the government will have to be agile enough to come up with supporting campaign and whatever facilities that they can do. We have to move fast, and right now Thailand has been moving fast in terms of working with our international alliance, not only in terms of visibility but also in terms of bringing in or come up with specific campaign per group so that we can tailor-made to our customers. at the end of the day, our plan is to make sure that Thailand stay as the destination for business events. We have new tourism products and services for us to be included in the campaign to go out and bid for more business events from international.
Yep.
That's it from me.
Thank you very much. Excellent summary, looking back and looking ahead. Khun Sumet, you're now in year number, 9 of your TICA presidency? 11. Is that right? 11. I think that makes you one of the longest serving presidents of any association in Thailand, to have served concurrent terms. You've got a major challenge in terms of looking at sustaining the survival of organizations like TICA going forward, particularly with the impact on many of the members, especially the small and medium-sized enterprises. There are about 160 different associations related to travel in Thailand. Where do you see the association sector going forward?
Well, as you know, the MICE business, as we say, when there's a crisis, the business is the first to go and the last to come back. We've seen that every time. So, and this time is, we don't have to say it's the hardest. It's been almost a year with no business, and the government's efforts to start domestic tourism only helps a certain segment of the industry, mainly hotels, basically. Even the tour operators don't get the benefit because Thai travelers don't mostly use services of travel companies, as you know. But it's still a good effort, and it's starting the ball rolling. And in the meantime, us organizers, we mainly rely on, in the past, customers from overseas, from the Western Hemisphere, as Governor Surapon said. So it'll be quite a long time until we can see some trickle of business to start to come back. In the meantime, TICA is an association with a whole range of suppliers of the industry, not only hotels. We're a marketing association. We're not a main association like ATA, which comprises of inbound travel agents, or THA, Thai Hotel Association, whose members are mainly hotels. So those are the parental associations. For us, we do marketing for MICE, and we've been affected. And this year, we've decided to forego with the annual fee, membership fee. Because only slightly more than half of the members have paid up since COVID, came into town. And next year we hope to start to revive. And in the meantime, we've been working very hard with TCEP, as Khun Nichapa mentioned. Jen asked how I was when we met in the lift, and I said I'm busier than pre-COVID times, in order to trying to keep spirit up with members, trying to bring up new skills and opportunities to learn and to pivot for members, and also to start planning for business that could come 3, 4, 5 years time. That's the nature of our business. With TCEP, we've started this ambitious project called Bid Agents Training. You see, this is an attempt to elevate the convention industry platform higher. Because before, we only relied on associations, mainly medical associations or pharmaceutical associations, to bring in events, international conventions. Now we would like to have more partners to seek more events which are likely to come, and also to develop homegrown events. And these people are being trained and being encouraged to go out to the market and hunt for business that would come in the future 3, 4, 5 years time. But we have to remain positive, and we have to look at the future. And I think to answer the questions about sustainability and quality tourism before, I think our industry, meetings and incentives industry, can contribute in that sense, because we know that this segment is high quality, high yield, and with higher spending than other industry segments. We would try to push forward with development in this regard, and make sure that services are as good as before or even better when COVID comes, because we know when COVID goes. Not again. I have nightmares with this. And so we have aspiration. We know that when skies reopen again, we know Thailand will be among the one of the top countries that people would want to come back. I saw in the Meetings and Conventions Asia magazine, November, December issue, Thailand is among the 5 countries, the top countries that people would hope to come back when travel reopens. So that's our hope. But in the meantime, we need to tell people to survive. You hear every week news about travel, big companies, small companies, close or furlough. A good example is a company mentioned by Governor Surapon just before. I mean, the company was started here since 1906, and it's a pity to see that they are taking a break and letting people go. And it makes people cry sometimes. So it's very sentimental and it's very emotional. But this is the crisis that we have to go through with. And we need to be together, and we look forward to making Team Thailand stronger when the business comes back.
Thank you very much indeed. Excellent. Thank you. Kumnirot Kap, technology is having an impact on guides. You don't need guides these days, or do you? You can find everything on the phone.
Yes. Yes. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, on behalf of my colleagues, the tourist guides, thank you very much for moderator for inviting me for here for give me to speak about my colleagues, what are they doing now. Yes, sorry. Yes, when as the topic, I would like to talk about looking back. Yeah, so then I will talk about the past of the Thai tourist guide. Since the Tourism Authority of Thailand or the Tourist Organization of Thailand have been established in the Field Marshal Traynor as Prime Minister at that time. And then in 1975, we have established the Association for the Thai Tourist Guide. So then we are younger than the TAT for the many years. At the moment, we are 45 years old. So then it's about around 15 years. And when in 1979 is Tourist Organization of Thailand changed to Tourist Authority of Thailand. I would like to say thanks to the all former and present governor of the Tourism Authority. That's very kind of us to help us since we have we have been promoting tourism. And we have close relation and co-relationship and cooperation between the TAT and the association until at the moment, even though we have to change to the Ministry of Tourism and Sport that established for the government reform in the 2002. And now we are under the Department of Tourism for register. At the moment, we have registered tourist guide about 70,000. Under the Tourist Business and Tourist Guide Act 2008, and the amendments number 2 and 2016. Even though it's before the previous time in the first tourism law was legislated in the 1992 under the Tourism Authority of Thailand before establishing the Tourism Ministry of Tourism and Sport. And also, we are also under the umbrella of the Tourism Council of Thailand as the private sector. Yes, as the Thai tourist guide, we would like to say that we are Thai, and also whatever the campaign from the TAT, we have to follow the campaign and try to develop us. We realize about the Thai's way of life, Thai festivity, Thai arts, Thai wisdom, Thai fun, and land of smile. And on the last one, I asked that Thai tourist guide as ambassador of Thai culture. This is the old picture. And also, I would like to say that even before the COVID-19, for myself as the president, and I have the loan sometime to be a lecturer to train for the new trainee. So that every time before COVID-19, I emphasize the philosophy of the sufficient economy of the late King Bhumibol Adulyadej to my trainee every time in the classroom to adhere the philosophy, because not only their works but also for the livelihoods to be well-being always and forever. Because it's a good with the principle, the mission path, moderation, reasonableness, and self-immunity. That will lead to the well-being. If the Thai tourist guide at the moment just phrasing about the trouble with the COVID-19, is everyone believe in the philosophy. So then, before COVID-19, there are some tourist guide should have not done something like buy the new condominium for the down payment, a new house, new car, and new wife. I mean, that's just married. So then you have to think for the long time. But because someone just pays for the down payment at one time, because never unexpected that it will have the COVID-19. Yes, our largest again is a very very good. This is the best statement of this philosophy. So then, I would like to say that not only the philosophy of the sophisticated economy, I as here and try to train my trainee to follows the global sustainable development of the United Nations to be combined and applied with our job to do the best job for the Thailand, for the tourism, for Thailand tourism. And now how to be so wise for Thai tourist guide at the moment in the coronavirus 19 finance. Now, we at the beginnings of the situation, because we want expectation, we don't think that this crisis will be for a long time. But then after the March, when it has spread to the over the world, so then it's not tolerable. So then we have to think of something for my member, especially for the Thai tourist guide, how can be survived. So then, fortunately, we have the kindness from the many shopping malls. The first shopping mall at the market at the Ratchandambari area, give us the space for the free of charge. So then we announce who would like to be the trader or the hawker stalls in the selling booths in the shopping mall. This is for some example. that's the above picture is the dress in the tourist guide who speak Japanese speaking tour guides and dressed in Japanese dress to be a trader. And also at the right corner, you know, not only for selling for the goods or the services, but also for the fortune teller. Fortune teller. It's a coconut and the snack and the coffee and some Thai tourist guy. You know, we are very proud of trying to promote them and spark them to think about how can you survive. Don't keep you alone in your house, in your home. You have to go out from your home, because I'm afraid of I'm afraid that we will feel alone, feel lonely, depressed, and maybe someone commits suicide. This is realized, and so then and now it's it works for this program. So then now everyone and try to do the best for them. This is a new for the right corner is a new blend of coffee from Chiang Mai. We call it Mon Ngo. Mon Ngo is a born in the house exhibition, and also now yes, thank you. Yes, it's a sausage, honey, and it's a som tam papayap, and also the taro, fortune taro. Yeah, taro. And so this is a spaghetti, Mediterranean. I would like, if you have a chance, I will please visit us at the market. And now this is one of the kind of the massage. We call the tapping line or the hammer massage. And also thank again for the TAT and for the try to help us with the program guide sharing, to do the clip video for promoting the attractions, and then give us 3 clips per person. Each clip 800 baht. And also we have the measure from the Ministry of the Labor to train us for the e-commerce. And I would like to say that looking ahead, even though we don't know where is the future, but we expect to have our council to be a mechanism for strengthening tour guide in Thailand. That is the Tour Guide Council of Thailand. Because we are under the Tourism Council of Thailand, but just only the Entrepreneurs Association. But just only us, we can say that only one employees association in the Tourism Council of Thailand, so that we have many things to restrict. That's our objective, to stimulate to having the Tourism Council. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Khun Vinod. Khun Monthira, you had a very interesting article in the Bangkok Post about a month ago about a new tourism business model for Thailand.
Thank you very much, Kun Imtiaz. And then I'm speaking today as a tourism outsider. I'm here on behalf of UNESCO Bangkok, which is the United Nations agency in charge of education, science, and culture. We work with the tourism industry. Actually, we've worked with Mr. We wrote before, with TCEP and TAT as well, but we're not in the tourism industry. And so I have a maybe slightly provocative presentation to share with the colleagues here on the stand with me, which is, we've talked a lot about new normal in tourism, but I think for Thailand's recovery, we should be looking for the new. What is the new? So if we look at the numbers, among the world's 20 largest economies, the reliance on tourism and travel for Thailand is in the leading ranks. 22% of the economy relies upon tourism, above the Philippines at 21%, Spain at 14.9%, or Italy at 13%. In terms of numbers of jobs that are generated, it's similar. So if you look at this chart here, the big circle that you see is an expansion of the little circle at the corner of the axis of X and Y. Thailand is literally off the charts in this axis, and you can see that Thailand generates and relies upon 8 million jobs in the tourism sector alone, overshot only by the Philippines, which is even more dependent on tourism jobs as a part of its economy. So UNCTAD, the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, earlier this year, released a report looking at the impact of COVID-19 on the tourism sector. And so while Thailand and the Philippines are very heavily tourism dependent, we're actually less dependent than places like Macau, where 74% of the GDP come from tourism. And a lot of islands, for instance, in the Caribbean and so forth, which are also very heavily tourism dependent. So clearly, COVID has been catastrophic, as our colleagues were saying, not just for 2 or 3 months, for the entire year and possibly for years to come. And so the UNCTAD report looks at 3 different scenarios: a moderate disaster scenario where 1/3 of annual inbound tourism expenditure is removed, an intermediate scenario in orange where 2/3 of inbound tourism revenue is removed, and a dramatic scenario in red where all annual inbound tourism and expenditure is removed in these countries. And what we see in these scenarios is that in the most dramatic case, $3.3 trillion will be lost. In an intermediate case, $2.2 trillion is lost. And if we look at this so-called moderate case, what does it translate into in terms of change in GDP for places like Thailand? Thailand is one of the most 15 affected countries from the tourism kind of disaster that is now facing us. And even in this so-called moderate scenario, Thailand is bound to lose something like 9% of GDP. And if we translate this into skilled wages, in terms of percentage of changes, negative 12% for skilled wages and negative 17% for unskilled employment. And you can see that women are going to bear the brunt of this because a lot of women are working in the hospitality sector, especially in an unskilled capacity like housekeepers and so forth. And so there's a really kind of a gender bias in terms of this catastrophic impact. And so when we take a long, hard look at ourselves and we think, look, Thailand is extremely tourism and travel dependent. And at the same time, before COVID started, there was already a lot of discussion, even dating back to the times of the governor here, where there was discussion about, well, what is the sustainability of the tourism sector? And already a lot of questions were being raised. Is tourism, as we classify it, a service sector, or as some people are now beginning to think about it, is tourism actually more along the lines of an extractive industry in terms of its impacts on natural resources, cultural resources, communities, and et cetera, who are the kind of recipient markets for all this tourism. So we're at really a turning point, and we can take an opportunity to continue in the same path that we've come along, or we could take this opportunity to pivot to something quite new. And so if we look at a roadmap for recovery, which is looking beyond the tourism sector, but taking the sustainability of Thailand socially and economically as a whole, definitely and for sure, in the short term, we have colleagues like the tourism guides who are facing personal, financial crises, social crises, and so forth, as well as many tourism businesses which have been forced to declare bankruptcy or close their doors. So in the short term, there definitely is a necessity for relief to ensure that workers and businesses survive at least till the next thing can come along, right? That's in the short term. But when we look at the medium term, we're going to have to begin to think about restructuring the tourism sector towards more resilient models of business. And if we take a look at the long term, Thailand as a whole, and we're looking here at the National Planning Authority, we're looking at people who are, sort of steering the whole ship, as it were, need to be thinking about macro level transformation and economic diversification. President Obama was once asked why, he was taking so long to turn certain things around. And he said, when you manage a country, it's like steering a battleship. It's not so easy to turn the battleship around. It takes time. But if you steer it in a different direction, eventually it gets there. So the whole point is to steer. And so, what is this 3 possible stages that faces Thailand? So definitely the colleagues up here have already discussed all the various short-term adjustments that need to happen in the tourism sector just to survive, right? So the reliance upon domestic tourism, the putting in place new measures of hygiene standards and so forth. And this is definitely something that is essential because the tourism sector is not going to leave us. We're looking at almost 40 million people coming a year. So it's not going to go away overnight, well, the way that it has, but in terms of a kind of a structural issue, it's not going to go away so quickly because a whole part of the economy is built around the tourism sector. But if we look at the sort of the next step in terms of medium-term pivoting towards so-called more resilient models, what are we looking at? So definitely there's the issue, as the governor was saying, about ecological viability. If we build back better, we need to consider environmental impacts as part of the cost of doing business, and not just a kind of a negative externality that can be pushed off to a faraway community or to another generation. We need to think about local self-sufficiency, as Kunwi Road was saying. If we can stand on our own 2 feet in a way which is not dependent on an external market, this is something that is worth pursuing. At the end of it, we're looking at community well-being being at the center of whatever is to be built back better. And at the same time, there's this whole other wave in terms of digital transformation, which is really huge. And everyone is jumping onto the digital transformation bandwagon as the way to change all industries, healthcare, education, etc. Tourism is already one of those things that is being changed by digital transformation. And what digital transformation gives us, aside from gadgets and the possibility of following this talk, in your pajamas at home through Facebook Live, is the possibility to reach out to new markets that may not have to sort of put on their boots and pack their bags and come and see you in your very own home village, but you can reach out the way that Alibaba has provided the possibility from your home village to the world. And so that's happening through digital transformation. And this is going to give us alternative revenue streams that we don't have at the moment. And so UNESCO is working actually with the Tourism Authority of Thailand, as well as with Expedia, in developing a kind of some models in terms of restructuring. And we've launched recently the Sustainable Tourism Pledge, which is aimed at tourism operators to think about lessening their impacts on the environment, as well as to develop tourism goods and services that are more culturally friendly as well and sensitive to the local market. And part of the expectation with this is that this is going to find some way to pay back local communities more. There are already a lot of operators out there in the tourism industry who have this sense of community well-being at heart, right? And so there are ways in which you can structure tourism dollars so that they can go in part back to local communities. So it can help fund local education, it can help, improve the local environment, it can help, expand local livelihoods. And there are people out there who are already doing this. They were doing it before COVID, and some of them, like Local Alike, sort of a small enterprise, used COVID as an opportunity to continue to benefit their local community partners by pivoting to selling exactly like the guides have been doing, selling food online and selling local products online through 2 new branch markets. And so this is something that is essential when we build back better. And part of it is towards developing propositions for shared value. So we're not just looking at financial value as the only means of measuring our success, but we also need to be looking at social value. And it's the overlap between social value and financial value, which is shared value, which probably is going to be the most sustainable proposition moving into the medium term and the long term. But at the same time, and we also have to think about long-term transformation. We cannot be like ostriches with our head in the sand and then thinking that, whatever is the path that has been set for us in the last 40 years is the only path that we can go. Because we can see many countries around the world thinking very drastically about reshaping their entire economic profile. And Thailand needs to be on that boat or we're going to be behind the curve. And so beyond new normal for tourism, we need to be thinking about new for Thailand's recovery. The UNCTAD report's final recommendation is that where possible, the only solution for future success is economic diversification. We cannot put all our investment and our manpower in the huge basket of tourism when we know that something like the pandemic will completely wipe that out. And so we need to upskill and reskill our workers to be able to think about pivoting to different economic sectors. We need to think about the possibilities of increased regional integration as well as other mechanisms for continued growth. And so if we think about pivoting from tourism to other opportunities, these opportunities should be higher value added. They need to lessen negative impacts, and they need to reduce our structural vulnerability for the country as a whole. In the tech sector, they talk a lot about what is called the Stan-Shi smile curve, which is the curve of higher value added. People in this industry try to move away from manufacturing, which is at the very bottom of the curve, and it yields the least amount of value added, and they try to move towards the blue areas, which is R&D, branding, IP, and design. These are the areas that you need to move if you're going to add value to your economy. And tourism so far is not one of those sectors that really facilitates doing this. And so if we want to think about Thailand in 5 years or 10 years and 20 years, what are the value-added industries that we need to be focusing on as a country? And so this is already in the national growth strategy, right? From Thailand 1.0 that was agriculture to Thailand 2.0 that was light industries, Thailand 3.0 which is heavy industries, and then finally Thailand 4.0 which is the value-added economy. The government has been pursuing this over the last decade or so already. So none of this is new, but it's just that it's a wake-up call for industries like the tourism industry, which sort of needs to get on this bandwagon. And so what is Thailand 4.0? The industries that have been identified as these so-called future growth industries are things like food, agriculture, biotech, and there actually is an overlap with tourism here. Or secondly, health, wellness, and biomed, and again, there's an opportunity to overlap with tourism. And these are low-hanging fruit, and already Thailand is pursuing the possibility of becoming a medical hub, and even with wellness quarantine, that's already talking about the possibility of bringing this on board. But at the same time, if we move beyond that, there's smart devices, robotics, mechatronics. There's digital, IoT, artificial intelligence, and embedded technology. And then finally, there's culture and creative and higher value services, which are all part of this vision for Thailand 4.0, which is Thailand post-industry. And so if we take the final chunk of it, and coming back to the work that UNESCO also promotes, we look at the creative economy. It is one of the fastest growing segments in the world economy. Before COVID, it was contributing something like 6.1% to the global economy, representing $4.3 trillion per year. And so clearly this is an important chunk of the world economy. It employs a lot of young people, and it capitalizes on the things that young people are interested in, technology, digital, etc. And so this is something that clearly is going to have a lot of growth potential. We look at these pictures I'm showing you now are from a global study, an online platform that Harvard University maintains, which provides you a snapshot of the macroeconomic structure of countries around the world. This is the structure for Thailand. Travel and tourism, by the Harvard numbers, show us that this is 21.77% of the Thai economy, alongside manufacturing and agriculture and so forth. Now, if we look at Thailand and the way it's always positioning itself vis-a-vis other ASEAN competitors like Malaysia and Singapore, which is sort of like the holy grail for ASEAN development, what do their breakdowns look like? This is Malaysia. Tourism is less than 10%. It's 8.27%. And in its place, the 20% is taken up by electronic integrated circuits. If we look at Singapore, tourism is less than 5%. It's only 4.12%. And instead, we have transport, we have insurance and finance, we have electronic integrated circuits, etc. So that's Singapore, which now is sort of the vision for Thailand in, I don't know, 5 or 10 or whatever years. And so if these are what the forerunners of the ASEAN economies are doing, then, you know, the people steering the Thailand ship need to be thinking about this as well, whereby we continue to maintain our market segment for tourism, because Thailand is a destination that travelers are interested in, business travelers are interested in, but at the same time, we also need to provide the possibilities for pivoting to other things. So as the ambassador was saying earlier, can you cap tourism and tourism arrivals? Maybe no, but maybe you can provide alternatives that are attractive so that investors are looking at other things as well, and not just tourism. And by investors, it's both domestic investors as well as, you know, international investors. And so if we move towards these new development pathways, it doesn't mean that we only have to do things like robotics and completely forget this sense of being Thai, but in fact this Thai culture, which is a huge asset, you know, for the country and for its people, can be something that can be leveraged in other ways. And so we take local culture, we take local creativity, we leverage it with digital transformation, we add, you know, the possibility of new business models, and in this case, we could find new ways of kind of growing the Thai economy in a much more sustainable and a much more resilient way to come. And so from UNESCO side, I'll end with a little self-promotion, we have been working on a new initiative to combine technology and culture together, and doing the same thing that the colleague Kunishapa was saying earlier, working with new startups and new entrepreneurs and sort of tech innovators in order to come up with new ideas for how you can drive new business opportunities using technology, but using culture content. And so this could be one way that we could think about moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. That was excellent. Wonderful. I remember in the 1990s, UNESCO, there was one of your advisors was a gentleman named Richard Engelhardt, who coined the term termite tourism, which at that time was referring to the danger of having tourists as termites crawling all over Angkor Wat, which was just beginning to open up at that time. And I distinctly remember at that time reporting on that very, very visionary warning, which of course has fallen by the wayside like just about everything else over the years in the pursuit of numbers. But I think we have had a wonderful panel today, looking back and looking ahead. And thank you very much indeed for a very, very great, wonderful wrap up on that. So we have a few moments for questions. Who would like to start? Lekha? Yeah, okay, go ahead. Sorry, you missed the earlier one. I apologize for that, but please make up for lost time.
No, it's just a basic question. Lekha Shankar, I'm a journalist. Since COVID has kind of totally changed the scenario, especially in the tourism field, I think for the future, the new norms for COVID are going to be existent always. So now when we look for bookings, we're not just looking for hospitality and environment consciousness. One of the first questions we want to check is whether they're following all the COVID rules, you know. So the point that one of them made about mice hygiene, I think this is going to become probably a semi-permanent feature in the hospitality industry. I mean, at least till June, even well after June. And TAT started this new strategy, new marketing thing, which I found very interesting. Thailand as a safe haven for COVID. I thought that was one of the new marketing things, which is really an effective one. So I just this is just a comment, but I just wanted maybe a response that COVID in many ways has changed the norms, new norms or new norms, like you say, and these are going to remain important in the tourism industry for the future.
Sorry, was there a question there?
Yeah, that's a question. I mean, I just feel that it's important that the industry has to be aware that COVID also has got its new norms.
Okay.
In terms of how, you know, like, and you have a rating system now. I know all the hotels have to go through the rating system. And this quarantine hotels are also are part of it. So that's going to remain. Apart from all the rest that we spoke about, I think the new norms in COVID are going to remain, and
Is your question addressed to any specific member of the panel? Or,
No, anybody. Maybe Kun Surapon could start, or whoever.
I can give a
yes,
opinion on that.
yeah, you want to take it?
As an operator, yes, COVID prevention or health hygiene would figure in place. But see, we provide services, so we provide whatever the customer needs, and I have a feeling that the world will get back to the pre-COVID days. If I can.
Sorry, mate, can you speak into the microphone a little?
Okay. In the near future, will the practices would still be with COVID concerns, right? With hygiene protocols, with distancing, and with masks and so on, and hand washing and things. But then, as I say, we are service providers. We provide service what customers want, and it'll depend on the habits or the patterns or the demands of the customer. If the customer in the future say, I don't want to wear a mask, will you let me into your hotel? We would probably say yes. Oh, I mean, by that time, maybe the vaccine is in place, maybe the disease has gone, like it's expected to go, like it comes and it goes. So basically, it depends on what the traveler's pattern will be. It would be positive, it would be good if people are cautious and remain cautious for as long as it can. But let's see what the future brings. I think, and mass tourism will come back. Over tourism will certainly come back. Airlines have invested in big planes. Where do the planes go? I mean, they will have to still be in the air. And we have expanded so much with no strategy, with no planning, with no study at all. We cannot go back and reduce the number of hotels and control the number of people to come. What we can do is to elevate services and uplift prices, quality of services, and maybe do capacity control at national parks and things to make sure to control to move ahead in a quality and sustainable way. That's what we can do, but it's a very big challenge to control number of arrivals as we would like it to be. We should have done this maybe 20 years ago, but hotels have mushroomed up. The new hotels coming up. The Amman is opening up the Amman Urban Resort nearby here, and that's big investment. And it'll be good for Thailand. It will be a good image for Thailand as a quality tourism destination. But all the 2-star, 3-star hotels are still here. So we will need to somehow think of how to uplift the quality of services as a whole. And that's how we can move on with a good balance of economy and also sustainability.
Tanpua Kap, would you like to comment on that? What kind of a new area might emerge?
New area. New area as a destination, or
in terms of the packaging, the way the product is sold, and to keep in mind, the fact that there are new realities of health, in addition to visas and all the other restrictions that will emerge. I mean, what will be the realities of getting business back again with all these restrictions and other things still in place? How realistic is this going to be? Would that be right, Lekha?
Well, it depends on the intensity of the pandemic. Right now, we are in the middle of the spreading, so people are quite worried. So I think the measure must be very strict. But I'm surprised. In some countries, they just don't really care. And some countries are very advanced, very educated, but just don't care. I don't know. I don't mention names, but there are countries that even their leaders come out with very big disappointment that they lost their life, a number of lives every day, while the practice is very just simple, putting on the mask and clean your hands. I think that's not complicated at all. If it can be done, if Thailand can do it, we are quite successful in this kind of protection and contain this and the spreading of the disease, then the other countries can do.
On the last holiday we had to leave the hotel for about 4 hours for the cleaning process thanks to COVID.
Yes.
So, it's really helped in Thailand.
Yes, I think this kind of practice might last because people think that it is good for them, good for the customers, and it also can upgrade their product at the same time. So I just only wish that this kind of sanitary can be practiced as a normal practice. It would be great. And
Kun Montira, do you have any sense of optimism at all on this, that the rush to get the business back again and get the jobs and everything else coming back again will actually see a more better balanced focus coming back in the agenda as you talk about not just the tourism industry but also looking at the entire economic impact of the travel and tourism for the whole economy, for the country as a whole?
I mean, I think the most important factor for economic recovery is confidence. So investor confidence, consumer confidence, and so forth. And tourism is a kind of good indicator about that. If people are feeling comfortable with the COVID practices, if they're feeling comfortable with sort of state regulation of borders and quarantines and so forth, then they will be more likely to move and more likely to spend. And this has a knock-on effect, on multiple industries, not just the tourism industry. And so definitely being able to kind of bring back that sense of confidence is very important. But at the same time, I think we should also take a bit of a long view. There are industries come and go. No one would have predicted 100 years ago that Detroit would have become a shadow of its former self today. And the whole Rust Belt in the United States, right, speaks about what happens when industries collapse and things move on. And so that is we are sort of seeing a kind of a harbinger of what that could be like for the tourism industry. And we could either be complacent and just pretend that it's not going to be a problem in the future, or we could look at the numbers and be like, well, what can we do to anticipate what the other things that we have to invest in are, while at the same time shoring up whatever is going to be kind of the nugget of the tourism industry that we continue to promote.
Okay. Question? Yes, sir. Please identify yourself, sir.
Sure. Good evening. I'm Gene Belenki from the Russian newswire RIA Novosti. We're talking a lot about vaccination that's coming probably soon, and the possibility that the tourism market will be open again after a certain period of vaccination. It may be the end of 2021. It may be the middle of 2022, but the question here is the one that I want to ask everyone on the panel, because your opinions may vary on this. Tourism is not just tour guides as high-quality personnel on the one hand, and housemaids or like ladies who do the cleaning in the hotels as at the other end as a lower qualified personnel. There is also a huge number of people who are highly qualified to do things that are absolutely necessary for tourism, like driving the boats, driving the buses, right? And for instance, in Chinese tourism, they were employing tens of thousands of drivers of big buses. That's not an easy thing to do. It's not just like anyone with a driver's license can just, hop up and get into the behind the wheel of a bus and just work. So what I mean is that if mass tourism restarts, well, the most optimistic idea about it was like 2022, right? Would by that time most of this part of tourist industry be gone, and we'll have to rebuild it from scratch again? And how much of an impact that may make on the prospects of returning to normal after COVID?
Okay. Kunmontira, that seems like your department again, the impact of mass tourism and how that's all going to affect the rebuilding process.
Well, I think, already there are beginning to be solutions that are emerging. For instance, someone was mentioning the fact that there are a lot of hotels in Thailand, and what are they going to do for the next 12 months or 18 months until tourism comes back? There are already some real estate companies that are opening up new branch services where they take the hotels not into receivership, but they take on the hotels to maintain them in the meantime while the rooms are not being filled, and so that they keep the premises upkept and in good condition, and then when they're ready to become hotels again, and open their doors, then they can. So I think there are, and that's sort of a new business opportunity that some people are seizing upon. So I think there are ways to sort of get through it, in the interim. Obviously, not all the enterprises are going to survive, and a lot of the SMEs just don't have enough of, capital kind of backup in order to be able to kind of even get through this. So there are going to be people who are going to exit the market. Some of them will exit temporarily, and maybe they'll come back. A lot of people who are individuals or small operators have gone back to what has always been the kind of the buffer that exists in Thailand, which is sort of the rural sector. People have gone home. They're fishing. They're growing plants. They're doing the things that their parents' generation have done, and only they recently moved into the cities to take on other jobs. And so Thailand does have that kind of backup plan, which luckily is quite flexible, and because of the nature of sort of Thai society, is absorptive and is willing to take that on. And so, but once again, what is the next thing on the horizon for us?
Yeah. Kunbirok, would you like to comment on that? The impact of mass tourism and where you see that going? Particularly as you want to promote the sustainability agenda.
Yes, for lots of the past experiences, like in the Chinese market. So then we would like to say that is quality of the tourists is very indispensable, but the important thing that is a government policy. So then I hope that this mass tourism cannot be happened in the near future, because of everything is to be strong, the measure to protect about the pandemic. So what we hope that the government sector I would like to focus on the quality of the tourism, because for the tourist guide, we don't want to do anything that's not good for our career, because sometimes we have to do something that should not do. Sometimes we have we would like to say that it should be like we have to say that about the trade should be free, but we think that we should also think of the fair. And also I would like to thank to you, many people aware of the sustainable tourism. We hope that Thailand in the near future we rely on the environment and sustainable, because we call Thailand tourism. This is the best destination, so that we choose maintain the good atmosphere of the environment. I hope so.
Okay. Any more questions? I have one final question before we.
Sorry, may I just add one thing?
Please.
Well, would it mean that when mass tourism comes back, and with the China market, you cannot say that it won't, because it will, because market dictates these things, not we don't. So when it comes back, will we need a massive effort in retraining personnel, starting from guides down?
Mate, you want to take that? Will there have to be a lot of retraining of personnel? for to be ready for the Chinese market on the ground?
Good question. We know that now people are, like Kun Montera said, a lot of people have gone to their homes, back to the roots, and trying to survive. Most of people in the industry are passionate about what we've been doing, and I know that given a chance, they will want to come back. But there has to be a good planning platform to give people a chance to re-skill, refresh their skill, refresh their knowledge, and give them some support. But now we haven't received due support so far. I mean, a lot of people who are out of jobs were able to retrieve their social security income, which is which will enable them to maybe survive for half a year. In the meantime, as Kun Montera said again, we are lucky that we have this foundation that we can go back on, and most of the people are from up country. You know, I myself, I'm in the city. I have a different activity now. We've come to sell food online and at markets. So just to not to survive, but just to keep going, and just to make sure that we have things to do and keep the spirit up. And we're helping each other. We have tomorrow we have a ticker luncheon every quarter, and we have like what the professional guys have been doing. We have like a market where we help each other, and we actually, that's not really the most important thing. The most important thing is to keep the spirit up and to try to stay together when business comes back.
Okay, we just have maybe just a few more minutes, so I'll ask the final question. In the true spirit of the FCCT, maybe a little bit of a provocative question. What impact do you see of the political protests right now having going forward? Will that affect the image of the country? Will that affect business? And is that likely to have any kind of effect on business coming in addition to the COVID issue?
I think it's been. I think it's not really priority. I mean, it's the impact hasn't been felt very much. Actually, there's no business, so it can't impact anything, basically.
Okay. Okay, good. Thank you very much indeed. And if there are no further questions, I think we have a little exceeded our time by a few minutes, 9 o'clock. So once more, please, I would like to thank all the members of the panel, and Kun Montera, Kun Purapon, Kun Sumet, Kun Virod, for joining us very much, and thanks for the platform. Thank you very much indeed for attending, and all those who have been watching us on Facebook as well. Thank you very much indeed.